What if a single phone call could destroy everything? Dinner was warm, filled with laughter and the soft clinking of silverware. Then, the phone rang. She almost didn't answer. Almost. Ivy, Knox is leaving you. He's moving in with me tomorrow. He promised for months. I won't wait any longer. Silence. Then, a fork slipping, metal against porcelain. She turned. Knox's face was pale, frozen. Across the table, their daughter giggled, unaware. Was this betrayal? Or something far more sinister? Stay. The truth is darker than you think. The scent of roasted chicken and buttered mashed potatoes filled the cozy dining room, wrapping the Wilder family in a familiar warmth. The chandelier above cast a golden glow over the table, where Ivy Quinn sat across from her husband, Knox Wilder. Their daughter, Lily, perched in her booster seat, swinging her legs as she chatted excitedly. And then Miss Parker said my drawing was the best in class. She even put a gold star on it. Ivy smiled, reaching out to brush a stray curl from Lily's forehead. That's amazing, sweetheart. You'll have to show me later. Knox let out a small chuckle, but his fingers drummed absently against the table. His plate was barely touched, his gaze distant, as if he were somewhere else entirely. Ivy noticed, it wasn't unusual for him to be distracted after a long day at work. Still, a small unease curled in her stomach. Then, the phone rang. It wasn't the usual soft chime of a text or email. It was an actual call. An unfamiliar number. Ivy hesitated before picking it up. Probably another spam call, she thought. But the second she answered, a woman's voice sliced through the air like a blade. Ivy, I think you should know. Knox is leaving you. He's moving in with me tomorrow. He's promised for months, and I won't wait any longer. For a moment, the world went silent. The clinking of silverware, Lily's voice, even the gentle hum of the refrigerator, all faded into nothingness. Ivy's grip tightened around the phone. What? Her voice was barely above a whisper, her throat suddenly dry. Across the table, Knox stiffened. Then, his fork slipped from his fingers, hitting the plate with a sharp, metallic clang. Ivy's pulse thundered in her ears. She slowly lowered the phone, her hand trembling. Who was that? Knox's voice was hoarse, strained. She didn't answer. She couldn't. Lily, blissfully unaware, kept eating, humming a little tune under her breath. Ivy forced herself to breathe. She looked at Knox, his face had lost all color, his knuckles white as he gripped the edge of the table. And in that moment, she knew. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a prank. This was real. And the woman on the other end. Emma. His mistress. The woman he had been sleeping with for the past year. Ivy swallowed the burning lump in her throat as she tucked Lily into bed. The little girl yawned, snuggling into her blanket, completely unaware of the storm brewing downstairs. Ivy forced a smile, brushing a kiss against her forehead. Sleep tight, baby. Lily murmured something incoherent, already drifting off. Ivy closed the door softly. And then, her expression hardened. With each step back to the dining room, her pulse pounded harder. The warmth of their home, once comforting, now felt suffocating. She found Knox still sitting at the table, staring blankly at his untouched plate. Who was she? Ivy's voice was quiet, but sharp enough to cut through the thick silence. Knox exhaled slowly. He didn't look at her. You already know. Her chest tightened. Say it. Knox finally met her gaze. His blue eyes, once the eyes of the man she had loved, trusted, held none of the guilt she expected. Just emptiness. Emma. The name left his lips without hesitation, without shame. Ivy's stomach twisted. She had braced for denial, for pathetic excuses. Not this. Not his calm acceptance of his own betrayal. How long? Her voice was like glass, thin, fragile, about to shatter. A year. A sharp breath hitched in her throat. A year. He had been lying to her for an entire year. Sleeping beside her. Kissing her. Holding their daughter. You planned this, she whispered, horror creeping in. You were never going to tell me, were you? Knox leaned back, rubbing his temples as if this conversation was exhausting for him. Ivy. I'm not happy anymore. This is what's best for both of us. The words were like a slap. Best for both of us. Ivy's voice cracked. You think destroying our family is what's best? Knox didn't flinch. He just sat there, watching her unravel, like he was already detached from it all. She grabbed the nearest chair, gripping the back so tightly her knuckles ached. You took money from our account, didn't you? A flicker of something crossed his face. For the first time, he hesitated. I don't know what you're talking about, he muttered. Don't lie to me. Ivy slammed the chair down, her voice shaking with fury. $20,000. Gone. Where did it go, Knox? He didn't answer. He wouldn't even look at her. You used it for her, didn't you? You put a deposit down for some place to run off with her, while I was here, loving you, trusting you. Ivy. His voice was eerily calm. Too calm. She sucked in a breath, chest heaving. Knox pushed back from the table, standing. The man before her wasn't the Knox she knew. He looked like him, sounded like him, but something was wrong. His expression held no regret, no shame. Just nothing. I have to go, he said simply. This isn't something you can change. Ivy stared at him. This wasn't just a man leaving his wife. Something had taken him. And she was going to find out what. Ivy sat on the edge of their bed, the glow of her laptop screen illuminating the darkness around her. It was past midnight, but sleep was impossible. The house felt different, empty, even though Knox's clothes still hung in the closet, his scent still lingered on the sheets. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she finally typed. Emma Harrington. A few social media profiles popped up, but none of them had photos. No tags. No personal posts. It was as if she barely existed. Ivy frowned. Everyone left some kind of digital footprint. There were no high school records, no old job listings, just nothing. Who the hell are you? She whispered. Her phone buzzed, pulling her attention away. A notification from the bank. Account transaction, $20,000. Her stomach lurched. She clicked into their joint account, her heart pounding. The money was gone. Withdrawn days ago. And the recipient? A real estate company. That son of a bitch, Ivy hissed. She had suspected it, but seeing the proof sent rage burning through her veins. He stole from me. From our family. A sharp gust of wind rattled the windows. Ivy shivered. The air in the room felt off. She stood, grabbing Knox's jacket from the chair where he had left it. It was stupid, but she needed to feel something real, proof that he had been here. That this wasn't some nightmare. Her fingers brushed against something in the pocket. Small. Rough. Frowning, she pulled it out. A piece of bone, wrapped in a dark red ribbon. Ivy's breath hitched. The air grew colder. Her mind flashed back, to a month ago, when she had noticed a thin cut on Knox's palm. She had asked about it. He had laughed it off. Just a little accident, he had said. But Emma had been there, resting a hand on his shoulder, smiling. "Nothing to worry about," she had murmured. Ivy clutched the strange object in her palm, her pulse hammering. This wasn't just an affair. Something else was happening. And she was going to find out exactly what. Ivy's hands trembled as she held the strange object, the bone wrapped in red ribbon. It was cold against her skin, rough, unnatural. Her instinct screamed that this wasn't just a trinket. It meant something. Knox had changed the moment Emma entered his life. Not just emotionally, but fundamentally. His eyes had lost their warmth. His voice had lost its sincerity. And now, staring at the eerie object she had pulled from his jacket, Ivy was certain this wasn't just an affair. It was something far, far worse. She needed answers. For hours, she scoured the internet, digging deeper into the name Emma Harrington. Nothing came up, no childhood photos, no tagged posts, no personal history. It was as if she had materialized out of thin air. That's when Ivy changed tactics. Instead of searching for Emma, she searched for her mother. And that's when she found Celeste Harrington. A chill ran through her. Celeste wasn't just any woman. She was infamous. Decades ago, she had been at the center of multiple disappearances, all husbands who had suddenly abandoned their families. Whispers of occult practices surrounded her name. Rumors of rituals and spells. And now, Emma, her daughter, was following the same path. Ivy's pulse pounded as she clicked through old articles. One in particular made her stomach churn. A wealthy entrepreneur. Devoted husband. Father of 2. Left his family overnight to be with a woman named Harrington. His wife, desperate, had gone to the authorities. He's not himself, she had told them. He would never leave us. Something is wrong. No one listened. They dismissed her as just another scorned woman. And then, Patrick disappeared. No body. No trace. Nothing. Ivy's breath came faster, her heart pounding. This wasn't just a coincidence. She squeezed her eyes shut, forcing herself to remember. When did Knox start changing? At first, it had been subtle. Small things, forgetting important dates, zoning out mid-conversation. Then it got worse. His temper grew short. He stopped looking at her the same way. He barely touched her anymore. Then, there was that night. She had found him in their backyard at 3 a.m., standing barefoot in the grass, staring blankly at the trees. "Knox," she had whispered, stepping onto the porch. He didn't turn. Didn't blink. "Knox, what are you doing?" A long silence. Then, his lips barely moved as he muttered, "She's waiting for me." A chill had run down Ivy's spine. Who? But he never answered. Now, looking back, it made sense. Emma hadn't just stolen Knox from her. She had taken control of him. Ivy clutched the bone talisman in her palm, feeling its unnatural chill seep into her skin. If she didn't stop this, if she didn't break whatever spell Emma had on him, Knox wouldn't just leave. He would never come back. Ivy sat in the dim glow of the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a cup of cold coffee she had forgotten to drink. The clock on the wall ticked, each second pulling Knox further away from her. She could let him go. She could pack his things, sign the divorce papers, and accept that the man she loved had betrayed her. It would be easier. Logical. But deep in her gut, she knew the truth. Knox wasn't Knox anymore. She had seen the way his gaze darkened when she questioned him, how his answers felt scripted, like someone, was feeding them to him. And then there was the bone talisman. The missing money. The eerie story of Patrick Langston and the men before him. This wasn't just infidelity. It was control. And she had two choices. Walk away. Let him become another ghost, lost to Emma's spell. Fight. Find a way to break whatever held him captive, before he disappeared forever. Ivy squeezed her eyes shut. Knox had loved her once. He had loved Lily. She couldn't abandon him. Not without knowing if there was a way to bring him back. Her search led her to a single name. Eleanor Graves. A reclusive woman, now in her 70s. She had been one of the few to investigate Celeste Harrington, before her name faded into legend. She was Ivy's only chance. Rain poured in heavy sheets as Ivy gripped the steering wheel, her knuckles white. Eleanor's house sat at the edge of town, hidden behind a curtain of oak trees. The lights inside were dim, casting flickering shadows against the old wooden porch. She hesitated at the doorstep, her breath shallow. If she stepped inside, there would be no turning back. Ivy raised her fist. Knock. The door creaked open before she even touched it. And a voice, low, knowing, spoke from the darkness inside. You'll hear about Emma, aren't you? Ivy stepped into the dimly lit house, her heartbeat hammering in her ears. The air smelled of old books, dried herbs, and something else, something metallic, like rusted iron. Eleanor Graves sat in an armchair by the fireplace, her sharp eyes studying Ivy as if she already knew why she had come. You want to break the bond, Eleanor murmured, fingers tracing the rim of a ceramic teacup. Ivy swallowed hard. Is it possible? A long silence stretched between them. The fire crackled, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The question isn't whether it's possible, Eleanor said finally. It's whether you're willing to face what happens if you try. A gust of wind howled against the windows. Ivy's hands curled into fists. She thought of Knox's empty gaze, the unnatural way he spoke. She thought of Lily, too young to understand why her father was slipping away. I have to try, she whispered. Eleanor sighed, as if she had been expecting that answer. Then you must understand something, Ivy. Breaking a bond like this isn't just about freeing him. It's about making a choice. What choice? Eleanor leaned forward, her voice barely above a whisper. If he is too far gone, if the magic has settled too deep, you won't just be fighting Emma. You'll be fighting him. Ivy's breath hitched. Could she face that? Could she destroy the man she loved in order to save him? A distant sound echoed through the night. Wind. Or something else. The fire flickered violently. Eleanor's gaze darkened. She knows you're here, she murmured. Ivy turned toward the door, her pulse pounding. Outside, the wind roared louder, rattling the windows like unseen hands trying to claw their way in. Was she strong enough for this? Was Knox even worth saving? The screen fades to black. Only the sound of the wind remains. And now, the question lingers. Did Ivy make the right choice? Was this ever about magic? Or was it just a desperate woman searching for a reason to believe her husband hadn't betrayed her? If you were Ivy, what would you do?